After falling into the water, my husband thought I'd lost my memory. I pointed straight at his younger brother, Lucas Grant, and said, "He's the real husband here." In my previous life, I'd immediately torn through Jonathan Grant's lie, not even noticing how his face darkened. Later, I caught him sneaking around with his precious Isabel Wood. That was when he locked me up in a secret underground cage and tortured me to death. A year after I died, Lucas, who'd always acted like he hated me, ended his life at my grave. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I fell into the water. This time, blinking away the cold and shivering, I playfully called out to Lucas, "Husband, I'm freezing." Across the room, Jonathan's hand slipped, sending the medicine bowl crashing to the floor. Meanwhile, Lucas rushed over, eyes brimming with tears, and pulled me tightly into his arms. 1. The air inside the room was thick with the sharp scent of herbal medicine. Jonathan and Lucas stood side by side, watching me. My temples throbbed painfully. Everything around me looked blurred, like some half-remembered dream. "Where am I? Who am I?" I mumbled. Jonathan didn't hesitate. Thinking I'd actually lost my memory, he pointed at Lucas, giving a half smirk, and said, "You're my sister-in-law, Elena Reed, and that's your husband, Lucas Grant." I blinked at Lucas in confusion. He kept a straight face, but there was a sadness sitting heavily between his brows. He avoided meeting my gaze, yet kept sneaking glances at me, looking like he was battling with himself, just like in my past life. Back then, I believed Jonathan and I were a perfectly loving couple. I didn't realize he'd already pledged his heart to his poor cousin Isabel, thinking of me as nothing more than a nuisance. After I fell into the water, he seized the chance. Noticing my foggy memory, he cooked up this lie, shoving me off onto Lucas. At first, I really was confused after nearly drowning, but my memories came rushing back soon enough. When I realized he was playing games with me, I didn't even think twice. I tugged at Jonathan's sleeve, tears welling in my eyes, desperate to set things right. "You're my husband. You don't want me anymore?" I choked out. Jonathan pulled me into his arms, face stiff but voice soft. "Of course not, Alina. I'd never leave you." Hearing that, I was overjoyed, instantly forgetting all the doubt and hurt. I clung to him all over again, believing everything was fine. Back when I was still a girl, I'd already fallen for him. So when the matchmaker came knocking, saying the Grant family's young master wanted to marry me, I was over the moon. Little did I know it was his mother who forced the match just to tear him away from Isabel. He, however, blamed it all on me. After we married, he kept things proper with Isabel, never letting anything slip. Meanwhile, he showered me with affection, never flirting with other girls, only sharing our private moments. I, naive as I was, thought that meant he loved me too. Silly me, missing all the times he murmured Isabel in his dreams. That was her courtesy name. 2. I was a concubine's daughter, never anyone's favorite, so when someone finally treated me well, even falsely, I clung to it. But after catching him with Isabel in the act, his face twisted with fury. He threw me into a cold, damp, underground cage. "You're nothing but a jealous fool. Isabel could beat you with just one finger. Stay here and reflect on it," he snapped. Snapping back to reality, I stared at him, catching that mocking grin on his face. He stared right back at me, eyes full of disdain. That one glance was enough to send a chill down my spine, making me tremble uncontrollably. My nails dug into my palm. The sharp pain barely kept me grounded. I locked eyes with Jonathan Grant and said, word by word, "I understand, brother." This lifetime, I wanted nothing to do with him anymore. From this moment on, our paths would never cross again. The days locked up underground were pure torture. Jonathan Grant would come see me once every month. Tied up in chains, trapped in darkness, I couldn't take it anymore. Tears blurred my vision as I begged him, desperate for a scrap of mercy. I screamed till my throat was raw. "Husband, I know I was wrong. I'll leave. I swear I won't bother you and Cousin Isabel again." But every time, Jonathan just stood there, cold and cruel. "Elena Reed, you're rambling again," he would say, voice chillier than ice. And right after, it would be pain, ripping me apart from the inside. He'd even order people to humiliate me. I pleaded with the servants, hoping someone would help me escape. But Jonathan had thought of everything. He'd made sure not a word of my begging would leave those walls. 3 months. That's all it took for me to waste away and die. After I died, Jonathan lost his mind, clutching my lifeless body, refusing to let go. He cried that he regretted everything. He kept saying that only after losing me did he realize who he truly loved, that what he felt for cousin Isabel had never been real love, just a twisted obsession over what he couldn't have. He sobbed over and over again, calling himself a fool. But it was too late. I stood to the side as a spirit, watching him with a heart full of disgust. Even now, just looking at Jonathan made me sick to my stomach. I turned away and looked at Lucas Grant. Tilting my head, I acted coy and called out to him, "Husband, I'm so cold." Clatter. The sharp crash of porcelain shattering echoed in the room. I casually shifted my gaze. Jonathan was trembling with rage, trying to suppress the fire in his chest as he spoke through gritted teeth. "Elena, that was just a joke between us. I'm your real husband." Lucas Grant's face went cold, and his tone got even colder. "Brother, some jokes aren't meant to be made. She's my wife." Absolutely disgusting. Jonathan dropped all pretense. No more smirks, only burning rage. I couldn't even bother to care. All my attention was locked onto Lucas alone. From the moment I called him husband, Lucas's eyes had reddened. He stood there, stiff as a board, staring at me like he couldn't believe it. 3. His emotions roiled. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally an overwhelming tenderness. His lips trembled, eyes shining with tears, as he pulled me into a fierce embrace. Jonathan clenched his injured hands so hard that blood trickled down. He coughed a few times and held out his bleeding hand to me. The strong smell of blood made me gag. Lucas quickly pulled me back protectively, wrapping me tightly in his outer robe. I tried to peek at the scene, but Lucas's warm hand gently covered my eyes. "Don't look, it's filthy." His voice was low and firm. Then he stepped in front of me, putting himself between me and Jonathan, eyes filled with undisguised contempt. "You know how much she fears pain and blood, yet you scare her on purpose?" My heart stirred in a way I couldn't describe. I brushed his hand aside and took a closer look at his face, pale but strikingly beautiful. Everything about him matched the Lucas Grant I remembered. No, if anything, he looked even more dangerously sharp now. In my memories, Lucas had always been the quiet one, distant and cold, even toward me. It was honestly the first time someone dared confront me like this just because I scolded someone else. Jonathan Grant clearly wasn't expecting it either. "What's it to you?" he snapped coldly, his hand shaking as he stretched it out, like he was testing how I'd react. "Elena, I'm hurt," he muttered pitifully. In the past, I'd have been a mess, frantically fetching medicine, patching him up, crying my eyes out. But now, I just leaned closer into Lucas Grant's arms, shooting that filthy hand a look full of disgust. "Brother, there's a physician outside. I know nothing about healing. You?" I cut him off, already bored. "I'm tired. I want to sleep." Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Lucas smirking like a puppy who just snagged a bone. Physically speaking, I was fine. The physician said I only needed to rest. Lucas's voice was low and steady as he said, "Brother, best you leave now. My lady needs to rest." Jonathan's face twisted, clearly losing his grip on that fake calm. He suddenly grabbed my wrist in a death grip. "You really want to break it all off with me that badly?" One by one, I peeled his fingers off, the rough grip leaving marks on my skin. "Brother, please mind yourself." "Elena Reed, you'll regret this." Jonathan spat through gritted teeth. Regret? The only thing I regretted was not figuring it out sooner. Regretted being so naive in my past life, letting him toy with me like a fool. Once Jonathan was finally thrown out, Lucas sat down by my bedside and gently held my hand. "Sleep. I'll be right here," he said. His hand was steady and warm, making me feel safer than I ever remembered feeling. 4. After a while, I woke up feeling uncomfortable. I really needed a bath. Lucas quietly arranged for the maids to prepare hot water. As they busied themselves, I stayed resting in the room. Before long, Lucas came back, carrying a folded rookin in his arms. "I had this made for you," he said a bit shyly. "Thought the fabric would suit you." I blinked in surprise. Lucas scratched his head awkwardly, cheeks turning a little pink. "The other day, I saw you staring at this cloth for a while. Figured you liked it, so I had it made." "Thank you," I murmured, but deep down I was confused. In my past life, Lucas had always seemed distant, calm, polite, but never like this. never thoughtful enough to have clothes made secretly for me. Back then, we rarely interacted at all. It wasn't until after I died that I learned how much he'd cared. My spirit had been trapped in my old courtyard. When the news of my death spread, Lucas had sought out Jonathan to ask for the truth. Of course, he got nowhere. Jonathan just told him I died of some mysterious illness, never giving Lucas the chance to uncover what really happened. That night, Lucas climbed over the courtyard wall. I was stunned watching him stumble clumsily into my old room. I floated after him, only to see him curled up so tightly on my bed, trembling all over as he wept. The pillow was soaked through. My heart shattered seeing it. But what could I do? I could only sit quietly by and watch over him. Later, I couldn't help it. I reached out to touch his hair, but I was just a wandering soul. My hand passed straight through his head. Softly, I said, "Lucas, don't cry anymore." I saw his handsome face flinch slightly under my imaginary touch. Lucas Grant's eyes snapped open, tears sliding down his face. A moment later, he shut them again. "Elena, if you're watching from somewhere, can you feel my heart?" The room went dead silent, save for the soft sounds of him weeping. After I died, Jonathan Grant sealed off the courtyard where I used to live. But Lucas forced his way in, no matter what anyone said, and stayed there, keeping company with my wandering soul. Everyone said he'd gone mad. Honestly, I thought so too. Late at night, he'd sit alone in the yard, mumbling under the moonlight. 5. I just sat there quietly, listening, watching his usually cold face stained with tear tracks. He was getting thinner by the day, coughing all the time, looking worse and worse. I wanted him to live well, but it didn't help. My voice never reached him. 2 years passed like that, day after day, like two lone spirits, separated by a wall we could never cross. We couldn't touch, couldn't hold, couldn't even hear each other. The longer I lingered, the thinner my soul became. I knew it wouldn't be long before I faded away completely. Lucas kept himself busy, running here and there. Trapped inside the courtyard, I had no clue what he was up to. But on the day of my death anniversary, something in me twisted with unease, like a storm about to break. Before he left that morning, he stood there for a long time, staring at where I was. That day, he never made it back. Everything was chaos, servants running everywhere, bits and pieces of news floating past. Jonathan Grant, eldest son of the Grant family, had been assassinated. The killer was on the run. It was Lucas. God, he was such a fool. My soul stirred up a storm of strength, enough to break free from the courtyard's chains. I followed something, like a pull, and ended up at my own grave. He was slumped over my tombstone, sobbing like the sky was falling. "Elena, I avenged you." Empty wine jars lay scattered around. I panicked. The vast graveyard was silent as death. "Lucas Grant, don't you dare die on me." I screamed with everything I had. For a second, he actually seemed to hear me. He looked right where I was, and a soft smile broke across his tear-streaked face. "You've come to take me home, haven't you?" And before I could do anything, he yanked out his sword and drove it straight into his heart. "Elena Reed, if there's another life, I swear I'll hold your hand this time." Thankfully, the heavens gave me a second chance. Looking at his face so close to mine now, my heart was tugged so tight it hurt, my eyes stinging with tears. The way he looked at the end, it crushed me beyond words. I couldn't help the sobs racking my chest. His hand gently wiped my wet cheeks. Head's hurting again? I'd caught a chill after falling in the water, but compared to everything else, this was nothing, barely any pain at all. I didn't want him to know about the whole coming back to life thing. I just nodded, rubbing against his palm like a spoiled cat. Not feeling good. Want a hug from my husband. Silly girl. 6. Lucas chuckled low and soft, ruffling my hair. "Only a hug?" Before I could even process it, he grabbed my head and pulled me straight into a kiss. It crashed over me like a tidal wave, deep and desperate, like he was afraid I'd vanish. I was already struggling to breathe. Out of nowhere, Jonathan Grant's voice rang from outside the courtyard. I didn't want to pay him any attention, but the guy outside just wouldn't quit, shouting and making a fuss. Annoyed, I intended to keep quiet, but somehow a sound slipped out. "Elena, you're my wife by law. Don't let him mess with your head." A small whimper escaped before I could stop it. Jonathan Grant started banging on the door like a madman. "Elena, what are you doing in there?" Answer me. Don't get distracted, Lucas Grant said firmly. I couldn't reply. He must have set this all up. His servants were lined up outside, making sure Jonathan couldn't get in. Technically, Lucas was the younger brother, but he was the one running all the family businesses now. Jonathan was just leeching off the family name, no real standing at home. A good half hour passed, and I was still curled up in Lucas's arms. The door kept rattling under Jonathan's furious pounding, his curses slipping through. Lucas Grant, who said you could touch her? Jonathan really couldn't shut up. I wasn't even in the mood to care, but he wasn't giving up either, dead set on forcing his way in. I reluctantly pulled away from Lucas's chest. He gently patted my messy hair, his smile soft and warm. Be good, I'll go deal with him. Lucas's face still carried traces of the intense moment we shared as he headed toward the door. The moment he cracked it open, Jonathan smashed into the room like a mad bull. His twisted gaze darted all over me, finally locking onto the red marks on my neck. You touched her? How dare you touch her? Jonathan roared, throwing a furious punch at Lucas. She's my legally wedded wife. You filthy rat, seducing your sister-in-law. Startled, I gasped, but Lucas simply sidestepped, dodging the punch with shocking ease. His moves were so smooth, so fast it caught me completely off guard. Every counter was sharp and ruthless. Within seconds, he had Jonathan pinned and threw him out the door. Get lost. Don't come near her again. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Lucas's back was a wall of icy determination. When he turned back to me, though, his expression had melted back into his usual tenderness. Scared you, huh? Honestly, I was stunned, speechless. Something was off here. Lucas wasn't as simple as he acted. You're hiding something from me, aren't you? I asked. Lucas's lips curled into a small smile, his voice low and soft. Yeah, you said you loved hearing me play the guqin, so I secretly started learning. What? I blurted. He pointed to the guqin, resting in the corner. Loved listening to him? Did I ever say that? Then it hit me. Back in my last life, every time he played, I'd linger outside the music room, hopelessly drawn to the sound. But wait, how would he even know? I shot him a suspicious look, only to meet his smiling eyes. I used to see you outside the music room all the time, he said, half teasing. He paid such close attention to me. I really had stood around, helplessly enchanted by his playing. But I still had some pride left. Now that he'd straight up exposed me, how could I even bring myself to listen again? Whatever. I gave up. I rubbed my hands together under his amused gaze, staring at his long, elegant fingers. Can I touch them? A faint blush crept up his cheeks. After a brief silence, he muttered almost inaudibly, The next morning, I struggled to sit up. His body still bore the faint marks I'd left the night before. He slept like a rock, not even a twitch all night. In my last life, I had shared a bed with him for 2 whole years as nothing but a wandering spirit. But this life, this was the first time we truly laid together. Flushed red, I wanted to make a run for it, but he caught me by the wrist. He leaned in, planting a quick kiss at the corner of my mouth, his eyes full of laughter. Feeling shy? Last night when you were calling me husband, you weren't so bashful. I pushed at his chest in protest. I'm hungry, I mumbled. His lips curled, but his hands didn't slow. I rushed to explain. I want breakfast. Right then, my stomach gave a loud rumble. Only then did he finally, reluctantly let go of me, still smiling. Though, someone else seems hungry too, he said with a playful glint in his eye. After we finished freshening up, we stepped out of the room together. The maid had already set the lunch table. The dishes covered the whole table, all my favorites. After we finished eating, Lucas Grant asked me, Got any plans for today? I can't really remember much from before, I said on purpose, then added, Why don't you tell me how we used to be? His cheeks flushed a little, a soft smile playing on his lips. You just loved sticking close to me, never wanted to be apart. So where did we usually go to have fun? I wasn't sure if I imagined it, but his expression dimmed, a bit of sadness flashing through his eyes. Well, he paused, as if digging through hazy memories. We liked staying in the manor. Just inside the manor? Thinking back to earlier, my whole body was still aching. No way I was spending another day inside. Lucas, let's hit the shops, I suggested. I'm not fond of the way the house is set up. He nodded lightly. The courtyard didn't have much, and it was all arranged to Jonathan Grant's taste. I wanted to change it all, not just to get rid of the bad memories. I wanted to fill this place with memories of Lucas and me. Lucas was always so on edge. Even when I stepped away for just a bit, he rushed to find me. Only when he saw me safe did he finally breathe easy, pulling me into his arms like he never wanted to let go. "Elena, I thought I'd lost you again," he said, his voice shaking, tears brimming in his eyes. "Not seeing you around, it makes me feel hollow inside. That's why I wanted this place to be ours, every corner filled with our memories, to ease that constant fear in his heart." In just one day, the manor looked completely different. I embroidered a pair of mandarin duck pillows myself and placed them neatly on our bed. I also picked out a few delicate blue and white porcelain vases from the market and set them around for decoration. Lucas kept saying I was being extravagant, but I caught him more than once standing there just admiring it all. I even had a seamstress make us new night clothes embroidered with twin lotus flowers. I filled the hall with fresh peonies in soft pink and white, as bright and tender as morning dew. In the study, I put a new inkstone we found at the market. Carved on it were a pair of lovebirds flying together. Lucas said one bird looked like me, full of life. I laughed and said the other one was him, gentle and watchful. We exchanged a knowing glance, no words needed. After a bath, we curled up together on the soft couch, flipping through a storybook. Lucas grabbed a thick wool blanket and wrapped us snugly inside. The story was about two lovers, where the girl, to save her beloved, drank poison, and only as she lay dying did he learn the truth. That heart-wrenching ending made my chest tighten painfully. If one day I had to leave, what would become of Lucas? He held on so tightly, maybe, like before, he'd lose his way again. No, it was up to me to keep that from happening. I sniffed a little, then seriously cupped Lucas's face in my hands. "Lucas, I want to get a cat. What do you think?" His face stiffened slightly. He clutched my wrist and held it tightly. "A cat? But you've always been scared of little animals." It wasn't that I didn't like them. It was that in the Grant family, rules were everything, and I never dared to break them. Back then, I begged Jonathan for ages before he finally let me bring home a kitten. But not even a few days later, his mother caught me. She kicked the kitten out on the spot, scolding me harshly. She said animals carried dirt, and a proper lady shouldn't be so careless. It was a disgrace. Then she made me kneel in front of the ancestral hall till I admitted my mistake. If I didn't, she even threatened to send me packing back to my parents' home. I never understood why loving animals could be seen as so wrong, but I didn't dare argue back. I truly didn't want to be cast out. So I knelt and cried and promised I'd never again keep pets. Only then did her cold expression soften a little. But by the time I stood up, it had been a full day and night, and both my knees were bruised black and blue. I clenched my teeth, trying to bear the pain. Feeling lost and upset, I wandered alone through the garden. That's when I happened to catch Lucas Grant playing with a stray kitten that had sneaked in. Under the soft wash of moonlight, he looked so gentle, almost glowing. It was a side of him I'd never seen before. Lucas was a concubine's son too, but from what I'd heard, his childhood had been even rougher than mine. He wasn't even acknowledged in the Grant family. He came into this world because his drunken father and a scheming mother made it happen. Honestly, Lucas was the one person the whole Grant house looked down on the most. No one respected him. No one even treated him like a real person. He spent his youth in the shadows, quiet and lonely. Only the stray cats and dogs ever showed him any affection. Still, he grew up strong, ended up inheriting the household, and shut up everyone who ever sneered at him. Standing there, I thought, maybe we could raise a cat together. And if one day I had to leave him again, at least there'd be a little cat to keep him company. But of course, I wasn't about to say any of that out loud. I leaned in and kissed him softly. "A little creature around the house would liven things up," I whispered. His face changed slightly. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but stayed quiet. "Please, Lucas." I couldn't let Jonathan Grant off so easily after everything he'd done. But if something happened to me, Lucas, you must live on. His dark eyes locked onto mine, silent and deep. You could hear a pin drop in the room, only our breathing filling the space. Under his gaze, I started feeling guilty, wrapping my arms around his neck playfully. Pretty please? All right. That night, I had a nightmare. I dreamed of Lucas lying dead in front of my grave, his white robes soaked in blood. I bolted upright, heart pounding, and realized I was alone in bed. Where was Lucas? Panic shot through me as I jumped off the bed, barefoot, and rushed out. I heard a noise outside. My heart dropped, and I hurried over. I pushed the door open. Lucas? You're awake? Lucas was outside trimming a peony bush, a few brand new shears lying nearby. When he looked up and caught sight of me, his eyes were filled with tenderness. I thought, if the flowers bloom well next year, you'd be happy to see them, he said. Back when I was locked up in that dark underground room, the flowers had withered away and died, with no one to care for them. Lucas had watched it happen, helplessly. Maybe now, planting new ones was his way of making up for it. Why are you just in a thin robe? It's chilly. You'll catch cold, he scolded gently, quickly taking off his gloves and draping his cloak over my shoulders. He even pulled a small stool over next to him, motioning for me to sit. What made you think of planting flowers? I asked. His long fingers moved carefully, filling the pot with soil, patting it down before sprinkling it with water. The peony petals glistened, heavy with dew, looking almost too beautiful to touch. When the whole courtyard's full of flowers, we'll sit here and enjoy them together, he said. I could almost picture it. Lucas, we will see that day come. Later, we adopted a little tabby cat. Lucas was far better at taking care of it than I was. He was so gentle and patient. Every day he kept himself busy, but his face always wore that soft, warm smile. First thing in the morning, he'd water the plants, then feed the kitten, and after breakfast he'd take me out on walks. Jonathan Grant never came to bother me again, thanks to some moves Lucas must have made. After we bathed, Lucas and I would curl up together and read, just like always. Our little kitten liked to sprawl at our feet, purring contentedly. Life felt perfect. The person I loved was right beside me. One tilt of my head and I could kiss those tender lips. Just thinking about it made my heart light up with joy. I couldn't stop smiling no matter how hard I tried. I felt this childish urge to snuggle closer. Wait, why did Lucas look like he was suppressing a smile too? Could he tell what I was thinking? So embarrassing. I thought I hid it so well. Just then, that handsome face leaned in, pressing a kiss against me without warning. Lucas? I gasped. Elena, I love you, he whispered. I thought we'd have a lot more time together. Turns out, I was dead wrong. The day we got back from the market, Lucas Grant went to get the carriage ready while I waited by the road. He had just left when a black carriage pulled up right in front of me. I knew that carriage. It was Jonathan Grant's. Without thinking, I turned to run, but two guards jumped down, grabbed me, and shoved me into the carriage. The coachman lashed the horses with his whip, and we sped off. The curtain snapped shut, cutting me off from the outside world. Jonathan Grant, are you out of your mind? Let me go. Elena, I finally found you, he said, walking toward me, his build looming. Why would I let you go? I backed into the corner. Just before I smacked into the side, he caught me and pulled me into his arms. His cold fingers slid over my waist through my clothes. He really had gone crazy. What did he want this time? Lock me up in the basement again? No way. Curled up tight, I fumbled at my waist for the dagger I kept hidden. But the moment I touched it, Jonathan pinned me against the corner, his long arms snatching it away without hesitation. I lunged at him, trying to grab it back. Jonathan Grant, what are you trying to do? With one hand, he held me down, and with the other, he threw open the curtain. Right in front of my helpless eyes, he hurled my dagger out of the window. No! Satisfied, he pulled me closer and pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Elena, you really think you lost your memory? My brother lied to you. I'm your real husband. He tricked you when you couldn't remember. But don't worry, I'll help you recall everything. You're mine, always have been, all right? No, let go of me. I struggled with everything I had and slapped him hard across the face. Instead of getting angry, he hugged me even tighter. His eyes looked frantic as he muttered, Elena, stop lying to yourself. You love me. You only got with Lucas to spite me, didn't you? Because I used him to toy with you before, wasn't it? I was wrong, Elena. Let's start over, all right? Jonathan was completely unhinged. But, Jonathan Grant, I never loved you. That's a lie. You're lying to me. During those long, dark days locked in the basement, I thought about it over and over. Did I ever truly love Jonathan? Before the marriage, I was just dazzled by the polished version he showed the world, a childish fantasy. After we wed, I got sucked into his fake tenderness. But once he showed his true colors, I saw everything clearly. It had been a setup from the start. He'd been in love with Isabel Wood all along, but he didn't dare defy his family or throw away his status. So he dumped all the blame on me. Jonathan was a coward, through and through. How could I ever love someone like that? I shoved him away and tore right into him, one brutal word at a time. Jonathan Grant, you've always been in love with Isabel, but didn't have the guts to fight for her because of your status. Pathetic. All these years, and I finally said it. Jonathan froze for a second, then his face darkened, and in a flash, he started tearing at my clothes. The cold air hit my bare shoulders, and the madness in his eyes came roaring back to life. His hand slid down from my neck, slow and deliberate. No, I love you. Every second you spent with Lucas, I wanted to kill him. But he had power. I couldn't touch him. If you're going to die, you'll die with me. Just like in my past life, he wanted to lock me away again. But I wasn't the same helpless girl anymore. A sharp pain tore through my lips, the taste of blood flooding my mouth. I reached into my hair and yanked out a golden hairpin and drove it straight into Jonathan's chest. He immediately grabbed my wrist and slowly twisted the end of the hairpin. Feel better now? I should have seen it coming. Jonathan Grant had lost his damn mind. The carriage jerked hard, brakes screeching loud enough to make my ears ring. I stumbled forward uncontrollably. Quick as ever, Jonathan caught me against his chest. Maybe it tugged on some wound of his, because he let out a low grunt and yelled at the driver. Are you trying to get us killed, you useless mutt? Young master, there's a carriage blocking the road ahead, the driver stammered. It was Lucas Grant. His carriage charged at us like he didn't care if we all went down together. A closer look showed there was still a narrow gap ahead. They were all crazy, Jonathan even more so. Ram them. Let's see if he's got the guts for it. But he'd overestimated human bravery. No coachman would bet his life against two lunatics. At the last second, instead of ramming, our coachman yanked the reins, veering us right into the roadside thickets. Lucas's carriage stopped instantly. He leapt down, fury burning in his eyes, and ripped our carriage curtains open. Seeing I was unharmed, he let out a shaky breath, then crouched and lifted me out, draping his coat around my shoulders. Stay here, sweetheart, he said softly. Then Lucas dragged Jonathan out and punched him square in the face. No words, just raw fury with every blow. Jonathan was already hurt from what I did earlier, and now with the crash, his legs were messed up too. Now Lucas was beating him so bad he couldn't even cry out. This wasn't good. If Jonathan died here, Lucas couldn't walk away clean. Stop it, I said, grabbing Lucas's fists with both hands. We should go home, husband. The driver, thankfully, was fine. When we got home, Lucas brought a doctor to patch Jonathan up. Madam Grant heard about it and tried to storm over and attack me. Lucas stepped in fast and had a few words with her. Whatever he said, it cooled her fire instantly, and she didn't come at me again. Jonathan woke up later, but Madam Grant announced he'd lost his mind and needed to be sent away to recover. Where they sent him, I never asked, and I really didn't care to know. 3 months after Jonathan was shipped off, Madam Grant suddenly fell ill and passed away. I nestled against Lucas, poking his waist teasingly. My lord, how'd you talk Madam Grant down that day? She knows damn well, between his life and the family's reputation, which one's more important, Lucas muttered, turning his face away from me. Still mad. He was upset because I'd purposely approached Jonathan, even knowing he was dangerous. I had distracted Lucas when I saw Jonathan's carriage that day. Don't be angry. If I'd told you up front, you never would have let me go, I coaxed him. Did you even think about how I'd feel? No calming him when he was like this. Grinning, I slid my arms around his neck and acted all cutesy. Of course I thought about it, I said sweetly. How? Exactly. His voice was rough. I wondered what delicious dishes my husband might prepare for dinner, I teased. Lucas exploded. He crushed me into a tight hug, resting his head against my shoulder. His hot tears soaked through my clothes. He held me so hard I could barely breathe. Ouch! I winced. Do you even know how scared I was? His voice broke, body trembling slightly. If something had happened to you, what would I have done? Elena Reed, why do you always have to take risks alone? I could never leave him. I just didn't want him to get hurt. Look, I'm back safe and sound, aren't I? I had stuff to protect myself, I whispered, stroking his hair gently. The sobs in my arms turned hoarse, rough. If he had hidden you away again, what would I have done? If I couldn't find you, what would I have done? Silly man. Lucas Grant, if you cry again, I'm kissing you, I threatened playfully. He lifted his head from my shoulder, eyes red, looking just like a poor little bunny. Ridiculously adorable. You're lying to me again, he mumbled. I wasn't lying. I licked my lips and leaned in, brushing his mouth with mine. Soft and sweet.